Hello and welcome to the Move Your Business Forward podcast. These talks are hosted by Rob Boll, founder of Evoke Management and CEO of International Leaders UK. We'll be talking with experts from both these companies about issues that affect SME companies today.
Welcome to this episode of the Move Your Business Forward podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by one of my colleagues at Evoke Management, Jerry. Jerry is one of our experienced part-time directors, specifically focused on IT and technology. So welcome, Jerry. Paul is joining us from Sonin, one of our partners that we work with. And Paul's background and speciality is software development, so bespoke software development for companies. And companies we're talking about here are SME companies that we all work with and support. And the couple of things I wanted to talk about today, which I think would be useful and very time relevant, is why people are looking or should be looking to invest in software, and specifically their own software for their business, not something off the shelf. And I think the two things that come up often is companies are looking to save money. So they've got a lot of resource deployed either by software that they're paying for that doesn't necessarily do exactly what they want to do. They might have people, they might have inadequate processes and all that kind of stuff. So investing in software to save money is one thing. And then secondly, if you've got the ability to produce your offering, service, product through a form of technology, then I think this also gives the option to make money. And I think those are the two things I wanted to focus on, is why someone would be looking at software to either save money or make money, and what their kind of thought process should be. And given we've got two specialists in IT from different perspectives here, I thought it should be a good conversation to have. So once again, welcome, and let's get straight into it. So Paul, you're sat there looking at clients that are coming to you guys to say, look, we think we should invest in some software, we think we should build something for ourselves, and you're going to help with that. What do you normally talk about in the first steps of how that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think kind of in line with what you alluded to at the start there, where we would always start from is that kind of why point. What are the business objectives that you're trying to achieve? Because there are so many opportunities on the make money and on the save money side of things, that a lot of the time is about making sure that you've got that initial alignment internally, that everybody is there for the same reasons. And so we'll start from that point of view, and then it's a case of building up as much of the picture as you can to make sure that you're building the right thing. We will then go off from the objectives to start looking at the context of use and everything else, talking to the end users, making sure that the thing that we think we want from the business point of view will work and will roll out throughout properly. And then also obviously the end users, and they will vary depending on whether you're on the make money or the save money side of things.
And I think one of the things there immediately I'm thinking is what I think companies struggle with. They might come to an agency like you or an outsourced provider of building software, and they don't know any of the things you just started talking about, or they haven't thought it through. I guess, Jerry, your point of view, you've worked in companies as that head of IT, driving and kind of road mapping the IT strategy. And at some point, you'll get the business to a point where they should be having that conversation with Paul. So what's your kind of interaction that you'd expect to have with the business before maybe talking to a Paul or an equivalent?
Yeah, right. So I think that, it's essentially around what the business needs are, either on those two things, saving money or making money. What is the ambition here? Understanding some depth around the requirements, what the aspirations are, what the level of investment that'll be available for this particular project is, key to this sort of things. And I think obviously when you go down the road of custom software development, scoping is absolutely critical, keeping it on the road in that respect. But it's very easy to start doing everything. And what's really interesting, I think, when you get the business involved in these kind of projects, everybody's really interested in it. You get in meetings and nobody's sitting there and they don't want to be here. Often people really seize and get enthusiastic about these kinds of projects, which is great and exactly what you need, the energy and that sort of drive. But obviously it can also then push yourself into a situation you get scope creep. You forget about what you actually started out trying to do, and you don't really achieve either aim, whether it's saving money or making money. So I think it's really important that you start simply, okay, and you work through that process, in a sort of patient way, but not taking, forever over this sort of things. And then you suddenly realize, okay, what is it we want to do? Now, who do we need to engage to make that happen? I think, today, businesses have actually got incredible capabilities available to them to build software, way more than they've ever had in the past, I would say, and doing it at cost, which wasn't really achievable in the past, with cloud platform providers now as well. There's so much software that's just out there and available, and easily to integrate within your project and what you want to do. But there's so much of it, it's extremely complicated, actually. So having experienced partners to work with to build the software and take it on a journey which is going to be manageable and sustainable in the future is absolutely critical.
So just taking a bit of a step back there, because I think one of the things, all the things you've said there make sense, but you alluded to scope creep, things kind of drifting and either taking longer, or we suddenly we've realized we haven't defined exactly what we want early enough to, then we've got to revisit it. And the scary thing with all of that, I think, is it costs money. Everything you have to either rework, revisit, or start afresh with is a cost of money, not just spend on developers, but it's time. And if you're looking for quick results from investing in this kind of IT, it just delays the whole process. So, but what I'm trying to get is the two sides here. Jerry kind of inside the business in IT, heading up some of that strategy, Paul on the outside, trying to deliver a solution that's fit for purpose and is realistic in terms of what someone could expect in a time frame and what it's going to do for you. So Paul, from your perspective, how do you give your customers comfort that you're not suddenly going to open up a black hole of just money pouring in to keep spending money on this thing? How does that work from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's why that initial piece where you're looking at the objectives and everything is so important, because we will always suggest that you want to get as many affected parties in the room as you can. So not just one specific department. The days of it being an IT project are long gone. It's a business piece. So you want to get everybody in the room, but that means that, as Jerry says, everybody gets excited. So starting from the why you're there, so that you can then prioritize and make decisions against that is the most important thing. And I think the other thing is that nowadays, we're not in a day back in the days of waterfall development and other methodologies. Most development projects will take place in an agile way now. So we're looking to get value to the business as quickly as we possibly can. And you can always do things down the line. So when you're engaging with other stakeholders that get very excited and want to add other things, it's a down the line. It's a not now. This is our focus now. So let's keep driving at that. And let's get that to the business as quickly as we can, so we can start to return value immediately, rather than ending up in that scenario where you either have a ballooning scope or a never-ending requirement cycle.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think actually one of the interesting things you said there is this is not an IT thing really, and it's actually a business thing. And I think this is possibly an older way of thinking about it, isn't it? This is IT, so that IT will deal with this. This is actually integrating the business into the language that is communicatable between business and someone that's going to build some software and build the right thing on budget to the right spec. So Jerry, I guess that's an interesting thing, isn't it? How do you get engaged with the business to make sure you've really understood what you're trying to solve? Because this can be complicated. What on the surface you might be trying to solve through IT, it could be one factor, and there's multiple things there that need to be addressed as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's critical you get the business to sponsor, and you have representation from the business at all levels that are going to be impacted, or from the project, that they're engaged and they're invested in the program of work. Again, when you build custom software, you're kind of asking the question of saying, well, this is going to be an asset ultimately of this company. It's either going to add to a brand value, or it's going to add to our revenue capability by increasing sales, or it's going to have some impact on cost by reduction. So it may be an automation project, for example, that you want to do things more streamlined and quicker, right? It doesn't matter really. They all have an aspect that says, look, you're going to spend some money on this piece of work. Ultimately, you need to get an ROI out of it. And the ROI has got to be based upon what you thought it was going to be. So the business case is absolutely critical. And I think like with Paul and companies like Sonin, they will, they're responsible third parties that are going to develop for you will ask those questions too. And you don't get involved in this black hole potential, right? Because you know what the scope was, you know what you were trying to achieve, but you also break it down into steps with kind of minimal requirements along each step as well. And because you take the business with you through that process, they can see actual stuff happening. I'm sure, Rob, you've probably seen it from the back in the days of the old waterfall models where IT investment went in and then you didn't see anything for like 18 months. And then what you got back was like, that's not what you expected it to be, right? It's just fundamentally different today. So it should be with the agile approaches. So the business can come along all the way and you can show them and say, hey, look, next week you're going to see this, and this is what we're going to demonstrate to you. Now you get a choice to set option to say, does that work? Is that what you expected? Okay, great. If it's not what you expected, well, actually, we can change that very quickly now. And then, very quickly within a week or 2 weeks, you can see those changes. So it's so vital that you build your projects in that way. That gets you to where you need to be very quickly. And if ultimately you're going to find, and this is true, failing fast is critical here. You sort of started down a particular path, you thought you were going to get something. You need to know quite quickly if that's not going to be the case, or if it's going to be something different, right? And you need a pivot. Either way, that's kind of a point in time you've got to get to quickly in order to minimize costs. Again, working with responsible third parties will always help keep you on track in that respect as well. But I think the more I've seen projects work that way, fundamentally they're going to be more chance of succeeding. I would say.
No, great, thanks, Jerry. And I guess Paul, from your perspective, everything Jerry's spoken about was almost like his expectations as someone heading up the technology function of a business. Does that all sound reasonable and what you'd be expecting to be able to deliver for a business?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that from a business's point of view, if you find the right partner, you want to find somebody that is aligned to trying to achieve what you want as a business, rather than it's just there to be a arm's length supplier, because I don't think that you'll ever get the best out of a relationship that way. So everything that Jerry's talking about releasing it early, getting it out there, seeing what's going on. I think there's an interesting piece where a lot of the time, if you don't have a close relationship with a supplier, you might find that they're not as involved in actually watching the success metrics, looking at the analytics and engaging with your users to drive that kind of continual development cycle. And that kind of means that you may not necessarily know whether you're failing fast or not. So I think getting the right partner that's going to be engaged in a long-term piece for you is really important from that point of view. And yeah, I think it's all about speed and getting it out there.
So two things I would like to just move on to then. One is actually something we didn't cover at the beginning of this, is firstly, what are the reasons why you'd be looking at bespoke? So what are those triggers to say, to a business, you need to be looking at something more bespoke here? And I guess bespoke could mean connecting with off-the-shelf type softwares, but it's taking it to a next more bespoke level. So just talking a little bit about that, and then I think we should be talking about what are the things that are going to improve the chances of this kind of thing being a successful partnership to develop a product that's going to add value to save you money, make you money. So Paul, talking about bespoke, why? Obviously, you're in the business of creating stuff, right? Which is bespoke. So there's potentially, that's what you're doing. What would you say to someone that's thinking, should this be bespoke? Should this be off the shelf? What are the kind of things you'll get them to look at or think about?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the time, if you're looking at something that is fairly simplistic, then those things, you might have a really simplistic business process, or you might have a just something that's quite standard in terms of a job queue or something like that. Those types of things are served really well by off-the-shelf software. I think as you start to get into things where you are either more focused on the customer and delivering a far higher customer experience, then those things start to move into a bespoke realm. Equally, if you've got lots of different systems that you want to pull together, lots of complex workflows, that type of thing, then that starts to move again towards the bespoke side of things. I think it's one of the things that you said there, Rob, is interesting, because whilst it's bespoke software, we always recommend that you will leverage existing systems as well. So there are great providers for things like messaging, SMS messaging, for video calling, for those types of components. So those are things that you don't want to be creating yourself. You're not adding value through the bespoke software there.
Yeah,
that's a service that you can take from somebody else, and you can focus on the bit that actually makes a difference to the business and the end user by integrating their third parties.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thank you, Paul. And Jerry, anything to add on that? Why people get to that point where they actually need to invest in their own customized bespoke software?
I mean, obviously, this classic statement is the buy or build argument, as to why are we doing something. And I've seen this replayed over and over again in multiple organizations. And I think the simplest way I've always thought about it is, if you ask yourself the simple question is there intellectual property here in what you're trying to do? And do you want to own it? Because if you do, then some element of this project is going to be bespoke. Mm-hmm. But as Paul was saying, around bespoke can be lots of stuff that, come off the shelf, right? And you can knit these things together. But what's critical is that you understand what your IP is. Now, the IP could be in terms of algorithms. It could be in terms of data. It could be in terms of sort of how you engage with your customer in a kind of niche way. Those are things that you as a business would want to own and say that's going to be mine, and it's a value to my enterprise, so that we take that forward. It's important to say, well, if I partition this up in the right way, I can quite quickly say, okay, I understand certain percentages projects is going to be our IP, and the rest of the percentage of the project is going to be no IP. So that actually that area, we've got to make sure that we do it in the most sustainable way, mm-hmm. cost wise, and it's just literally planning it in that respect and being very clear. And obviously, by having an iterative cycle of development and being close to the development team, you can understand what people are actually spending their time on and what they should be spending their time on. And you really want to keep everybody's eyes on the prize, working on the core that is IP, and let other third parties or whatever deal with the lifting on the stuff that really obviously is just part of the scaffolding process, really, of getting your product out there.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, thank you, Joe, for that. So that all makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about improving the chances of success. So I guess the last thing to wrap up on this is, what are your top tips from both perspectives? So Jerry, in that kind of within the business type, heading up IT technology strategy, and then working with a partner like Paul, what are the top tips you would have for this partnership that needs to happen, working and delivering a successful end result, which could be iterative, right? So it could be something that we get out launched in phases, but it's making sure we're pushing as a kind of team effort in the right direction. So Paul, from your perspective, what would be your top one or two tips to improve the chance of that success?
Yeah, I think interesting, some of the bits you've talked about there. Being open in the partnership with the provider that you're going to work with is important. Like I said at the start, the more you work together, the better the chances. Making sure you've got internal alignment around the fact that you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Engaging with everybody, so taking the time to do things like user studies, user interviews, focus groups, and then doing things like prototyping as well, so that each step you go through, you can be as assured as possible that you're going to end up in the right place. If you've got any areas, we always say that when you're looking at the roadmap, that you should prioritize by risk and then by value. So if you've got any high risk, any big legacy systems that you're trying to integrate technically, then chew that off first. Make sure that you're actually going to be able to produce this before you get a long way down the road. Yeah, and I think that will get you in good stead. A lot of the time, it's the humans that you want to make sure it works for them.
Yeah, no, 100%. Jerry, any top tips you've got to improve that chance of success?
Yeah, it's really. I think it's two simple things. It's the idea and the people, right? So, is the idea the right idea, and does the idea continue to be the right idea through this process, and keep checking that always. And then people is really about who's involved in this project. Now, whether that's internal teams or whether it's with a third party. I think from having worked in both capacities, really, I would say the best result is always going to come when you engender and invest in a good partnership with a third party, and you work as colleagues in that way, and you don't treat the third party as a supplier and there's a big wall between you and them, and that's how your relationship and culture works. That never works, never ends well. So I think engender a good, strong working relationship with your partner that you're dealing with, and also keep checking the idea and making sure that's still what you thought it was.
Yeah, sure. No, understood. And just one thing to touch on from what you've just said then, kind of both of you, is clearly having a really clear scope and thought through exactly what you're aiming for as an output is key to keeping this kind of technology build on point cost-wise and time-wise for delivery. But we're in an everly increasingly fast-paced environment where whatever business we might be in, there's other people coming up with new bits of technology, new ways to interact with customers, new ways to deliver a service. So this is an evolving thing. So what is right now might not be right in 6 months' time, or might need that kind of tweak. So, Paul, from your perspectives, how do you work on that kind of, just everything's changing anyway, so we've got to have a dynamic way of working and kind of thinking about these kind of projects. How do you cover that?
Yeah, I think you're right, because things do change at a hugely rapid rate, and that might be priorities internally. It might be something that the market does or a competitor does. Fortunately, if you build things with the right architecture now, then you can build in the ability to meet that flexibility. I've been around long enough to deal with old monolithic systems, and now we live in a world of things like microservices, which means that you can break everything apart and add new pieces in. It gives you that added flexibility. Alongside that, obviously, it's how you work with your partner. So making sure that you're continually prioritizing. You don't build out a 2-year roadmap. You're constantly reassessing what comes next. You're making sure that at the end of each sprint, you've got something that's shippable, so that if you do need to change direction, that you can do that. So I think there's between the technologies that are available now, it gives you the facility to do that, and then you need to make sure that you work in a style that allows you to do that.
Yeah, I guess part of this thing is also thinking how far out your technology roadmap might be. So we're talking about trying to build something that you get a quick return from, but that could be part of a 2-year type plan, I guess. Do you encourage people to talk longer term about their plans, just to see, okay, how could this morph over time? Is that something that improves this kind of partnership process for you, Paul?
Yeah, definitely. I think that vision of the direction that people are going in is really important. One of our core values is around understanding, and we try and make sure everyone on the project knows what people are trying to achieve and the direction that they think that they're going to go in. Yep. It doesn't mean that you're set on that path, because it is going to change. So we, like with every planning process, you have much more fidelity over the stuff in the near term, and as you get further away, then that'll change. But it means that, again, if you're working in partnership with somebody, they can be looking at the stuff that's in the future, coming up with the new ideas, assessing new technologies, and feeding that back. So that longer term view enables you to get more from your partnership as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Paul. Jerry, any final thought from you in terms of just the things we've just been talking about, just improving that chance of success, or hitting a button on getting something bespoke built?
Yeah, no, I think just echoing on what Paul was saying about it is a continual investment cycle. You don't just start the work and then finish the work and then that's that. It's something that's going to last a lot longer than that, and you've got to understand that when you start off down this stage. Software will require continual investment. In terms of keeping it relevant, but also a process called evergreening, which is making sure that ultimately what it's built from is up to date as well, because this stuff can go out of date really quickly and become very expensive to change in the future. And if you want to be adaptive and allow the business to benefit in the way that you had told them they were going to benefit from when we're doing the work. Ensuring that you've got that continuous investment going forward is critical. But planning wise, I would say you've got to have a vision which is long term, but you've got to have a planning thought process which is short term, understanding things are going to change, and manage the business expectations obviously all the way through that process as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Jerry. I think that ties things up nicely. Both of you, thanks very much for joining this. Hopefully there's some useful things to get people thinking through that conversation, and perhaps we'll get together for another one of these at some point in the future. But thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like more information about the topics discussed in this podcast, then you can find us on our website at moveyourbusinessforward.com.